First and foremost, sincere apologies about the wait. We've spent about 65 minutes trying to actually get onto the internet. And I think one had to do with when we were first born and the kind of personalities we have here. In terms of organisation skills, that's definitely not our forte. But I want to welcome you here. My name is Dwayne Burridge. I'm one of the co-founders of IATO. I work alongside Akram Azumi, Dylan Collard, and Kelsey Forrest, and Sandra, and many other people you meet tonight. And we operate in a very interesting space. It's a space where people interface. And at that particular interface, we trace both the history, the anthropological, the philosophical context of that interface. We've been doing that for a few years. And what we're really fascinated in is really what it takes for people who are different from each other to come together and to connect and to honour each other's dignity. We're very fascinated with that. But we want to welcome you. If you live nearby, we welcome you. If you've travelled quite some way to be here, we welcome you as well. If you have a lengthy educational background, we welcome you. But if you didn't have that kind of background, for whatever reason, especially, and a special welcome to you, we welcome those of you who have certain commitments to be elsewhere and are feeling at this moment that pull to be somewhere else. We welcome you. We welcome those who have a private contract that if this gets bored or weird, or if everyone's a jerk, I'm going to bail out. If you've got that contract, and I know I've made that one a few times at meetings like this, then you're welcome here too. Importantly, I want to recognise our special guests here tonight. We have Associate Professor Simon Forrest, who I'm going to invite up to do an acknowledgement of the country. We also have Ronnie Forrest as well from Future Footprints. We have Yap Hole, our chairperson. We have the president of Rotary Crawley and his wife. So a special welcome to you. Professor Simon Forrest, if you'd like to come up to the front. And after this, we will begin the evening.
Yeah, good evening. I've been asked to do an acknowledgement. The country here, normally I might do a welcome to country, but that takes a lot of organising and involves smoke and all that sort of stuff. Fire alarms, I can see that. Little water sprinklers, they don't happen. So. But an acknowledgement to country can be done by anyone, just not a Noongar elder like myself. And it's something you should all get skilled at doing when making presentations to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country here. It's Wajak Noongar country. This place, Perth, is original name is Borlu. Borlu is the original name for Perth. These are things that you should learn, find out about for when you acknowledge Wajak Noongars. Because Wajak Noongars, the first humans to create societies on this landscape, and started 40,000 years ago, at least 40,000 years ago. My mother, maternal line, traced back to a Noongar woman. The early days of the Swan River colony, and she had two children to one of the first Chinese immigrants to the colony by the name of William Marcin. They had two children, and one is my mother's great-grandmother, a lady called Mary Marcin. So remember Borlu, knowledge of Wajak Noongar traditional owners of this country, original owners of this country. Dylan asked me to say something a bit about Borlu, where we are here in Perth City. A couple of things. My name Forrest is a Wadjala name, whitefella name. It comes from that guy whose statue is less than 100 metres from here, on the corner of Barrack Street and St Georges Terrace. It's the Wadjala side. But Borlu, interestingly enough, just before I was born, around 1954, was the last years of the restricted area of Perth for Noongars. This is our country, but we were restricted from entering Perth in an area bounded by the river, basically up Spring Street and Milligan Street, up to Newcastle Street, and then Newcastle Street basically down to Bennett Street in East Perth, and back down to the river. That was a restricted area for Noongar people. So my parents would come here, courting, just before I was born, they could only be in Perth, in Boorloo country. In their own country, could only be here between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. They were in that area, any Noongars in that area outside those hours, they could well be arrested and charged for being in a restricted area. So there's some things you need to know about this place, about how our place and about how our treatment and how that's affected, past treatment has affected generations of Noongar people. Having said that, I'm very honoured to be here and participate in this, and welcome to my country. Kawan wajak nija, nija wajak ngapunja.
That's wonderful. The next man we're going to be hearing from tonight is a close friend of mine, Akram. Following Akram's remarks, I'll be taking the floor again. We'll be going through some of the theoretical concepts about tonight, social cohesion, some of the barriers to social cohesion. We'll be watching a short video, another short video. Sandra will join me, and then the main part of tonight is the breakout groups. We've got a phenomenal lineup of activities that each of us will engage in, where really this collaborative spirit will produce some brilliant ideas. I'm very, very confident with that. But Akram Azimi.
Thank you, Don. It's a privilege to stand before you and share a story. And I've chosen a particular story from my life, and in response to a question a lot of people have for me. I got the Young Australian of the Year award, and in my mind, I feel like an imposter. I feel like a complete and utter imposter. Because what I was doing up there in Kimberley is I was hanging out with friends. I was going up there and I was having some great food. I was going fishing with friends. Then we'd take the kids to the river, the Fitzroy River, this beautiful, beautiful river, and we'd play footy for a whole week on that beautiful sand. And then once in a while we'd talk about education. We'd talk about what the kids wanted to do, their dreams. But I would have the most amazing time. And then after about 7 years, they said, Akram, we want to nominate you for this award. I was like, what for? What for? You're mentoring work up in the Kimberley. Okay, all right. And then they gave me this award, and then I started going around Australia. And you know what question I sometimes get? And it's often a very well-meaning question. It's this: how come you're not helping your own people? It's like, sorry? What? How come you're not helping your own people? And you remember the word help there. It's a very, very important word. Your people. And then the question is, why are you helping Indigenous folks? Helping. That's another important word there. And I'm actually dumbfounded by that question. I really, really am. I'm dumbfounded for that question because of the following story. I was about 18, 19. I'd been in Australia only for a number of years. I don't really know anything about this expansive culture that surrounds us. So I would have normally, if you had taught me, if you'd got me at that stage and brought me up here, I've never been able to say the following. With gratitude and respect on my tongue for the traditional custodians of this living land on which we gather, the Wajak Noongar folks, I pay my respects to them, not out of protocol, but out of the self-evident truth that their culture surrounds us, informs us, indeed is an integral part of what it means to be Australian. So for this grand reason, and many, many more personal ones, I pay my respects both to the elders past and present, and to all other Indigenous folks present here today. Now this kind of acknowledgement of country I would have never given all those years ago, because I simply just did not know. I'd never met an Indigenous person. But did that mean I didn't know anything about Indigenous Australians? Not really. Not really. I was living at St Georges at the time. It's this beautiful college right across the river and right next to the UWA. And my chaplain comes up to me and goes, "Hey Akram, would you like to come to the Kimberley and mentor some young Indigenous kids?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Problem was I had 3 questions in my head. what's mentoring? Where's the Kimberley? Who are Indigenous people? And when I walked into that community of Luma, I realized I didn't walk in there with a blank slate. That's the thing about ethnicity. That's the thing about these divided groups. We're always communicating. The problem is we're always communicating in the wrong ways. And I had been fed and I had absorbed all the wrong kinds of information. I walked into that community of Luma. It's about 200 kilometers east of Broome. In one hand, I was holding my luggage. So you can imagine me, I don't have any facial hair at the moment, right? I'm this tiny, scrawny kid, right? I've got my big luggage in one case because I have no idea how much clothes I'll need, not much, right? I'm lugging around this, and then with the other arm, right, I'm holding on to all the prejudice that I didn't even know I had. You see, I bought into a lot of the stereotypes with respect to Indigenous Australians, a lot. I was steeped in a system where that was never challenged. And what fills that up is all that stuff I'd been reading in the media, all that stuff I'd watched on TV. So what happened is, I mean, I'm ashamed to say this, but this is how I felt. I felt threatened. I walked in that community going, there's danger here. I've been told their identity is something I have to be afraid of. So I walk into this community, right? Now just imagine me one hand holding my luggage, the other one holding my prejudice, right? Walking in, really, really nervous and not wanting to share this with anybody else. Because of course, I didn't want to seem like an ignorant, racist person. And I wasn't. I was just ignorant. And I walked into that community expecting the worst. And around the corner, this group of little kids, this big, with the chubbiest cheeks you're ever going to see, they just run up to us, right? Do you see? The wet season had just ended, and the roads were open again. And we were the first folks to actually come into the community. And they were just excited, these little kids, and new people to play with. And they just ran towards us, and they had these chubby cheeks, right? That would go up and down every time they ran, right? Like that. And they just launched themselves at us, gave us hugs. I was like, wait a second, you're not conforming to my stereotype here? You're so nice. And then they started grabbing our hands. Come on, I'll take you to a watering hole. I'll take you fishing. No. And then they said, other boy goes, no, I've got to take you to the shops. I've got to take you to the shops. I'll buy you something. I was like, wait a second. Why are you guys so nice? This isn't working. They started actually welcoming us so nicely. And then they started sharing so much. It was so incredibly generous. And I was struggling. I was struggling to categorize them. I really was. And there was this one little boy, his name was Little Wayne. I'll never ever forget this. We were sitting down, both of us, Little Wayne is there, and he's a cool dude. Little Wayne is a cool dude, you know? Like, sitting there. He's almost a young man now. He's into that cowboy scene, so he always used to wear these big buckled pants, right? So you just sit there in his buckled pants. I remember leaning up against a tree, he was right next to me. And you see, sadly, in Luma, you don't really get a lot of fresh fruit. And every day, he just has this pipe. And he got the art of smearing this pie perfectly with tomato sauce. Right? And I noticed he was doing something really strange. He was biting it really, really small, like little tiny bites. And then he turns around and kind of elbows me and goes, Akram, it'd be a perfectly half pie. And he was like, you take my pie. Stop messing with my stereotypes, man. I've got these prejudices I've got to hold on to. Of course, I didn't say it in those terms, but my mind was struggling to make sense of it. But still, I wasn't connecting. Still was not connecting. And we go to the river. We play along the river for about a week. I start to get to know the kids, but not really. Do you know what I mean? Not really. I wasn't really connecting. All this new information was coming. But I was still holding on to my prejudice, so it really, really was. And then on the last day, I'd been tired. You know, you run around with 10 to 15-year-olds, right? You get exhausted for a week. So I was lying on the banks of the Fitzroy River. I was sunbathing, and a group of 5 boys come down the hill, and they're doing that thing where they're walking really, really sneakily. And I kind of just looked up, and I knew they were going to do something really, really naughty and mischievous. So I just kind of lay there. Boys just kind of sneak up, right? Kind of sneak up, and one of them, the leader, Ryan, he pokes me in the ribs. I'm like, hey man, And then another pokes me in the ribs. I'm like, hey. And then the third one, as soon as its little tiny fingers go in for the little poke, right? I grab him, put him over my shoulder. Oh, and there's crocodiles on the other side of the river. I grab him and I say, I'm going to feed you to the crocodiles. So I run towards the crocodiles. His mates jump on me, and we start wrestling like silly, silly boys. And when you're sharing ancient Greek stories with these indigenous kids in the Kimberley, who have been here 40 to 70 plus thousand years, it just kind of boggled my mind. I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of fell in love with those kids and that community. And I went back the next year, and then the year after that, and then when the fourth year, I actually got adopted into a family. I have a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister. And I thought, at the beginning, I thought I'd had nothing in common. Turns out my grandfather, Big Roy, took me aside once, and he said, son, I've got a story to tell you. And he told me the story of his great-grandfather, who was an Afghan cameleer. So in 100 years' time, another sneaky Afghan had managed to worm his way into their family. And I just kept going back, and that bond just got richer and richer and richer. So when somebody asks me, why are you helping Indigenous folks? I just go, what do you mean helping? I'm the one who got the most out of it. Even mentoring, I was the one who was mentored. To be honest with you, it's really disingenuous to say I'm mentoring. I was the one who was mentored. And I wasn't helping. I'd come to the realization that any injustice that affects Indigenous Australians directly affects me indirectly. It's in my best interest to stand side by side with Indigenous Australians and champion the cause of reconciliation and recognition. And the last bit, why are you doing this? Can you see? Am I doing this because I have low levels of prejudice? Is that why I'm so passionate about this space? Of course not. I'm connected. I have a profound admiration and respect. I have affection. I feel comfortable in that community. I'm family. I'm engaged. We're going to do this together. And every time it comes time to go back to Luma, I'm enthused. And every time that someone from that mob comes down and I make sure we have a catch-up. I do this not because I have low levels of prejudice. I do this because I feel allophilia towards the people of Luma and some of the surrounding communities that I know, and to the Noongar mob and some of the Koori mob that I've gotten to know really, really well. I do what I do because of allophilia. Now we're going to explore that concept further. Thank you so much, guys.
That's what allophilia is. What is allophilia? It sounds like a blood condition. Anyone else in medicine think it sounds like it? Allophilia. Has anyone heard of it? How about another question? Who knows what the antithesis, the antonym is to the word prejudice? Or racism? What's the opposite? Tolerance? Is that the opposite? There are about 200 researchers at Harvard who had this same question. You know what they determined? There's no word. There's no word that describes the complete opposite of discrimination and prejudice. There's no word. Linguists, anthropologists, social scientists, they came together and they determined together there were 300 languages plus that they all had in common. But there was no word. So they invented a word. We're going to explore that word, allophilia. There are 5 dimensions to it. Before we do, we want to talk a bit about social cohesion. Why are we doing this? Why are we even here? What's the whole point? We'll watch a short portion of a TED Talk, which relates to it, and then we'll take things from there. So, accurate addiction to the status quo. The rest of the evening will be focusing on point 2. A lack of basic knowledge of the other and the other's needs. Minorities' desire for inclusion without loss of cultural identity. 5 is discrimination and inequality of opportunity. And 6 is lack of an entity, a body charged with responsibility of promoting social cohesion. These are 6 broad barriers. You pick the divided side, society. There'll be differences in culture, there'll be differences in history, but these 6 principles will apply. But rather than focus on what's wrong, the barriers, the wall, to people coming together across their differences, why don't we focus on what's possible? And tonight is really about focusing on what is possible, about particularly around resisting the status quo.
Whether or not they should go to school tomorrow. But the fact that we exist in a space where we can equally have this dialogue, the tension doesn't exist, and there's space for allophilia to be created. And if there was one way that I could change the status quo here in Australia, it would be to take this social cohesion and bring it outside of the little bubble of my life and spread it to society. So myself and some of my colleagues had this idea after we saw this. Has anyone seen this before? Yeah. So this was actually just started by a guy called Ronnie, who was a designer in Israel. And he posted this simple poster up online. And it went viral. It spread everywhere. Overnight, he had Iranians messaging him on Facebook. He had Iranian designers creating the same posters and communicating with him. And now this has become this huge organisation where Israelis and Iranians are sending messages to each other of peace and of love and of shared dignity and of allophilia. This has grown everywhere. There's now versions of it. North Korea loves South Korea. It's popping up all over the place. So we saw this idea and we thought, why not take this to Australia, to the asylum seeker debate, and show real people who have real allophilia, real love for asylum seekers. This guy Greg actually works on the mines. And he came to us and he said, I am sick of hearing all the horrible things that people think that they have the right to say about other human beings, and I want to be a part of this. And he goes, I want to use the language of Australia and the rhetoric that's so often used in racist ways to show them that we care. This is Elise. Elise was raised by a Sri Lankan mother and an English father. She's actually a marine biologist travelling around the world. She wanted to take part in it as well. This is Nev, one of our most recent posts. He's a PhD student at UWA. He moved to Australia with his parents at 2 years old and said that the only real difference between him and anyone else that's coming over is the fact that he was given the opportunity to have a better life. It's just a matter of the circumstances you're born into. This is Yasmina and her daughter. And this here is Ash. Finally, we have... Anyone recognise these people? This is our very own Dylan and Kelsey, who apparently hold the record number of likes. I think it went to 281 and about 40 shares all across the country, so well done to them. But it was a real honour to have them take part in it as well. Okay, so moving on.
We're very much different from ourselves. It's a love for the other. We're going to break into small group round and face humanity. So that's the interpersonal crew that will gather there. What you're going to do is you're going to come up to the front and take some paper plates, some butcher's paper, some marker pens. You're going to be getting, and this is really important, this is actually the most critical part of tonight, actually. When you come across an idea that you just feel it within inside of you, that, you know what, this is going to make a difference, this is going to put a dent in the status quo. I want someone from your team to blow this. Send a clarion call to everyone here at Spacecubed that, you know what, we're doing something different. This is a practical action that's going to put a dent in the status quo. We're going to increase interpersonal social cohesion. Well, in this space here where the lounges are, this is more individual. At the individual level, what can I do as an individual that's different, that can increase social cohesion or promote allophilia? At the back, we've got the community and organizational level. What can we do differently to increase social cohesion? And then right at the far end, that group is how can we hold government accountable for social cohesion? Now, for some of you who have been in the political space for some time, perhaps maybe don't go to the how do we hold government accountable. This is something familiar to you. How about we stretch? Let's stretch tonight. Let's do something that we normally wouldn't do. And perhaps we might make some creative associations we wouldn't otherwise. So those 4 places again: interpersonal social cohesion, individual social cohesion. What can I do on an individual level to challenge the status quo and increase social cohesion? Right there, the second cubby house, that's community, organizational level. Right at the back is how do we hold governments accountable? What can we do? What practical things can we do? Once you get the idea, you're going to write it down on a plate. And what you're going to do is you're going to collect a number of these plates with these ideas. You'll be blowing your horn, and eventually we'll come back together. We're going to lay these down, and we're going to see what we've actually come up with together. And we will promise you this, that you will be out of here by 9:30. Okay, so we're not going to keep you here for too long. So, for those of you who would
to actually create allophilia, how could we do that? I kind of did it today. I had a meeting with a Conservative member of Parliament, right? Federal Parliament, and this chap had said some very mean things about Muslims. So there I was, right? And I was like, how do I deal with this? And the best way I did, I suppose, is try to create kinship. I try to create a kinship with him. I try to admire him. I try to be enthusiastic. And by the end of it, he changed. That's one thing I did. I went up, and maybe we could write that down. Members of local MP, meeting local MPs and supporting them to do good, or being enthused by their, policies when they're doing good things for diversity. How else could we hold the government accountable?
It's like don't just blame, but form a kinship with them, I guess.
Yeah.
Don't just hold up a sign saying you're wrong or something.
That's actually a very, very good. How about we say that? Yeah.
Prove them wrong rather than just say you're wrong.
That's it. We have a word for that. We got to be a radical, positive counterexample to their stereotypes of you. They think you're one kind of person. Kind of like what those Indigenous folks did for me, right? They were radical, positive counterexamples. I was expecting people who are going to be mean to me. They're the kind of stereotypes we have, and just completely blew my mind. Maybe that's actually a very good point, Shane. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We blow?
3, 2, 1.
I think particularly with politicians as well, like they're used to getting so many negative messages.
Yes.
And I think even beyond being radical, positive counterexamples is sort of like praising them for the things they do well.
Yes.
I know there was some sort of thing where people just going around being like, "Thank you, Julia Gillard, for focusing on education."
Yeah.
And I actually remember being surprised when these people at uni came up to me sitting on the lawn.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is not usually what people do when they campaign to government.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't you want anything else? Don't you want anything more critical? But I actually thought that was a really cool idea.
That is a very cool idea, actually. How would you frame it in the allophilia framework?
I can't remember them. I guess kinship in terms of sort of, just like you would with your kid and your family or your friends, recognising things that people do well and praising them for that. What are the other ones? Enthusiasm? Enthusiasm. Recognising people when they actually do things well as opposed to just sitting back and criticising
all the time.
Yeah.
How about we support them to do the right thing as opposed to criticise them for doing the wrong things?
Yeah.
We just sit back. If they do something wrong, we go, stuff you. But we don't actually step in there and make sure things go right.
Yeah.
As opposed to always trying to put out political fires, why don't we try to stop being firefighters, right? And actually become people who help things go right.
So focus on the positive relationships.
Yeah, build those positive relationships. How can that be a tangible thing that we do? Because we're very much a focus. Because we're going to go back and we're going to share with the rest of the group something really tangible. What's a tangible way that we could do this, learning what we've just learned?
I don't know enough about the whole government process.
Yeah, this is good.
Media is a good way to spread things. So like you said, media praise, how they did the posters and stuff. do stuff like about politicians that do the right thing, perhaps.
Yeah.
And stuff and be like, thanks for this or something. Or,
Yeah. How about a thank you campaign?
Yeah. I've
Sounds
never
radical.
heard of before. Like what?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We get it. We
Yeah,
have,
sounds
we have a lot
great.
of things that we never really, we don't thank like politicians or the people that have put those kinds of things in place. A lot of the luxuries we enjoy as Australians, we don't.
That's why we
don't
pay
really
tax.
thank. Yeah, true.
To get all this stuff, I guess.
Actually, yeah. Why don't we thank somebody? We send Shorten a thank you for the National Disability Scheme because that was his baby. Thank you, Mr. Shorten. And it's really powerful coming from us because when we don't fall into that category, it's not for our benefit, but we know it to be the right thing to do. That's what makes it all the more powerful. See, me speaking about Indigenous Australians from a non-Indigenous perspective and letting go of that prejudice, that's a lot more powerful, I suppose, than an Indigenous person's coming up and saying, don't be racist. Equally so, rather than me speaking about refugees, it was a lot more powerful it coming from a white young woman. It's a lot more powerful than if it came from me. Because people will go, of course you would say it. Of course you would say it. It's in your interest. Right? You cheeky monkey. Look at you trying to sell us something here. Check his beard. He's got another ulterior motive. Right? That's the idea that I'm thinking. Right? Whereas when it comes from Sandra, it's different. It's different. So let's... what's a group that we do not belong to? Ooh, this is a nice idea. What's a group that we do not belong to that we can champion for? Because bad things happen when good people sit by and do nothing. And we have another, sadly, to be human is to indulge in the following tendency. It's only a crime when it happens to me.
It's that really great quote about they came for the
communists.
Said
nothing.
I can't remember.
Then they came for the homosexual, and then when they
They said
came for
nothing.
me, there was nobody left.
Yeah.
It's good. I really like that. Maybe is there maybe that can be one of our things. I'll put champion for a group that I don't belong to, but am connected to. So I don't belong to them, but I'm connected to them. I'm not Aboriginal, but I'm part of a family that's Aboriginal. That's why I champion this. Now, what's a group we could think of? And it's so much more. I could just imagine the politician going, "You're not asking for yourself here. You're not asking for yourself here." And it's a lot more powerful when your argument can't be undercut by saying, of course you'd say, it's in your self-interest to say that. The morality of your argument really comes to the fore because you gain nothing from this. Why are you doing this? How? It's the right thing to do. So that's one way we could say, go.
I was just going to say, look how far kind of gay marriage has come.
Yes.
Just in a few years.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago, I mean, everyone just assumed that everyone was against it.
Yeah.
And then people started standing up saying, no, you know what, like, I know people who are gay, they deserve to be married. So, and...
It's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And it wasn't just homosexual men and women that did this. It was heterosexual men and women that stood up and with them that said it. That's what made the difference.
Yeah.
That's what made the difference. Minority groups, by the very nature of being a minority group, if you're under 35%, you don't really have the same power in society to get your way. So what you have to do is you more or less rely on the morality of that society for your protection, because you're not part of the majority. And when times get tough, when people get scared, ooh, you know what's the biggest killer of allophilia? All those 5 things that we're talking about? Fear.
I mean, fear of the unknown, fear of what's different is probably one of the biggest parts of that, the biggest facet of not so much racism and stuff like that, but kind of judging anyone on a difference that they have from yourself. I think a lot of it's fear.
I think one of the best ways to eliminate fear as well is through experience.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it on a government level, but kind of experiencing something and seeing that it's nothing to fear anymore. Like your experience with the Aboriginal.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
why couldn't we? Why? And this is okay. I've got a little cool story to share with you guys. Sorry, if I'm dominating this. I'm so sorry. You know how in Britain now they're giving away 0.7% of their GDP to foreign aid. Like, that's huge, given the fact they're in massive debt, they're struggling, they're still doing this. And David Cameron said, "I refuse to balance our books on the back of the world's poor." Why was he able to get such widespread support? I mean, they're facing economic conditions far worse than ours. Wow, it's a bit of a genius ploy. What's been happening is, over the last decade and a bit, successive leaders have been taking parliamentarians to third world nations, and they're getting them to see what happens firsthand. So they're getting them to serve, build a house, train some kids, teach English, whatever, but immersing themselves in extreme poverty, and then they bring them back. And that's why you have a conservative government that is pro-foreign aid. We cut 4.5 billion from our foreign aid budget a couple of days before the election, and we're going to cut $600 million this year. Another 4 billion over the next 4 years. So it kind of really got me thinking. If you can help somebody experience something, right, and see that they didn't collapse, see that it wasn't what they thought. That's probably the best way. So how can we create an immersive experience for a politician?
In one of our shoots, actually, I think I'm not sure the guy with dreadlocks. I don't know who he is, but
Dreddy.
Yeah, Dreddy. I call him Dreddy. No, he made the point of, like, instead of subtracting away from whatever how much we invest in foreign aid and increase in our investment of defense or whatever. Instead of sending people to go fight other people, why not invest in foreign aid to, like, build or invest in the future of others or other nations, other people who are disadvantaged, and that way it sort of builds the kinship with those places. I guess
that's what we need to do. We need to build that kinship and then say, look, there it is, and we as a taxpayer, we support this. See, that's maybe something radical we could do. That's what Michael and I, my good friend Michael Sheldrick, I'm not sure if you know him, we've been going around, we've been trying to fight for foreign aid. What makes that argument powerful is Michael and I are now part of the very privileged. Foreign aid will never benefit us. That's what gives the argument its potency. Now, if you guys took a cause that did not directly benefit you and then became a champion for it, doesn't matter what it is, there's a profound power in that. So maybe that's something we could do. Pick a course that does not affect you, right? And champion for that. Does not affect you and champion that. And that fits in, I suppose, with the earlier point too, that you champion for a group that you don't belong to, but in some way feel connected to. What do you guys think?
I think as far as holding the government accountable for cohesion and stuff like that, I think there should be more like government-run, what we call like community development programs or something within the local government, even if it's just something like a soccer tournament or something like that. In somewhere like Mirrabooka or something where there's a large migrant population, something like that would get the community together, even if it's with not only one particular migrant community or whatever. Try and get them all together in one place, share food, stuff like that. Food's a great one, I reckon, for getting people to share a part of their culture with another culture. And if it was something like a food sale or like a bake sale or something like that.
Yeah, and that would be just the local community council, I guess.
Yeah. Actually, we have we have my church. Like, we're very closely related to the Ethiopian church, and there's a lot of them in Mirrabooka, and like a long time ago we used to get with them on a Saturday morning and play soccer at a park in Mirrabooka, and everyone, like all their families would come out. These people don't have much, Homes West and that whole situation and stuff like that. and they used to have a sausage sizzle, and you know, so good, like, because you know the cops, my group, and their group, and you know, it was good to get with them, I guess, and that's what, like, they became our lifelong friends, I guess.
And then take that to government and say, look, we actually care what happens to these people. They actually care. So they don't exploit that divide. Rather, they feed off the connection, and they become the champion for between those two groups, and saying, look, I love the fact what you're doing there, because it doesn't matter how they get political capital.
There's two ways of getting political capital. You can either get political capital by splitting people apart, right, and finding one group and being a champion for them, or you can try to bring people together and be a champion for the connection between the two. Now, if there are enough people giving politicians support, political capital, to do the latter, that could change the dynamics here in Australia. That could really change the dynamics in Australia.
Give them political capital for allophilia. For example, I actually know that Eleanor works a great deal with a few disadvantaged schools. I think her story, simply just that story with a local federal politician, would have a, wow, that's a powerful story. That she's doing that. Okay, she genuinely cares. There's somebody in my community who cares about those folks over there. Okay, I can't have them being seen as a politically disposable group. If I do anything wrong by them, Eleanor will be there to chastise me. Now that's something like that. Given the political capital for allophilia, not always criticize them for when they play us off one another. Kind of what happened you guys know what dog whistling is? Dog whistling in politics is this tactic that's used, right? Where you say something that sounds quite innocuous, but to a certain group of the population, it just enrages them and gets you on board. So, for example, if a politician were to say something like, look, just another boat has come, another boat has come, another boat has come, right? That the very phraseology, I mean, technically it's true, but the way he said it to a certain segment of the population, that's going to get them enraged. The dog whistle is a whistle that only the dog can hear. Like, it's that silent whistle because the frequency is so low. And when they do those sort of dog whistling, they're always marginalizing one group and saying, look, they're no good in this way, and that's why you need me to protect you from them in some way. Now, if there was somebody who went up to that politician beforehand and knew what he or she was going to do with respect to dog whistling, and actually, without criticizing, said, this is the affinity. I'm part of the majority, and I, as a majority member, have this affinity with those marginalized groups. Just really nice seeing you. See you next time. Suddenly he's going to think twice now about that dog whistling, because he knows that you know. That's something else. And instead of him having to rely on that dog whistling for political capital, maybe the political capital is actually from you. You can say, I can bring, because whenever a politician, this is something I have learned, I've met just about every single one of them, and I can tell you, whenever you ask them to do anything, there's always this question in the back of their mind, you and how many other votes? You and how many other votes? As long as you just understand that as a fact, then you can suddenly start to get something good. So for example, you and Ignite's 10 members, let's say, right? Go in there, right? You're not just 10 people. You're 10 people with all of your networks that are in that office. Don't ever underestimate the power of your own networks. Okay, guys, we'll get going.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey?
I keep forgetting how to spell it.
Oh, A-double-L.
Yeah.
That's right.
O.
This means love.
F-I-L.
For those
Oh,
of
no,
us
no,
who-
sorry.
for those of us
P-H-I-L.
who read the Christian text,
P-H-I-L.
Yeah, P-H-I-L.
years ago that said, love
I-A. I think
Sweet.
radical notion then, and still a radical notion now.
So how? Oh, I love it. Yeah, they're just.
Yes,
I wasn't just copying. I swear.
Allophilia.
I promise. Thanks for the acronym.
Oh, my pleasure. It was good fun, hey? Actually, I know a thing or two about that.
Yeah.
It's good fun.
Well, not playing, just watching.
As you lay your plate down, face the writing towards the chairs. So if you're going to take a picture, people will be in the meeting. And then if I can just comment, because I've got a microphone. We've got some great ideas here.
Who's going to stay out here? Or?
Beginning right
I'm going to put my plate in.
Yeah.
Have the courage to stand up and express ideas that promote understanding, that provide understanding of groups who are being denigrated. Have the courage. That's great. Have we got any more plates here? Holding governance accountable. Akron, that's...
We've got ours.
Okay. All right, so the people wearing visors, if you could come to the front, our cohesion coordinators, just serious people, really serious. Keep your visors on.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's interesting that Shane still looks really tough and strong. Doesn't matter what colour visor Shane's wearing, he will still beat me up. So we've got Michaela here, and let's just. How about you just call out your group, and we'll get to the ideas on.
So we are not we can do as individuals.
We had holding government accountable for our affiliate.
We were the community group.
We had the interpersonal group.
Okay. Let's start with James. Can you talk us through the ideas that you had here?
Oh, we had a really fascinating discussion, and it was about, so what can we do as individuals, and effectively, you know, some people had actual items that you could do straight away, which is, you know, stand up for others. If you're put in a situation where you know it's not generating social cohesion, actually stand up, make a stand. Then there was others, you know, Ronnie suggested she's actually going to, you know, be the neighbour and create her community garden in the next 24 hours. So that's for Ronnie.
We didn't want it to be too big, but we wanted to test the limit. We wanted to reach a good amount of people. So yeah, about 30, 40 odd. So that's all right, eh? Like, it's a different event to what we've run before, but I think we're definitely going to keep having it because it's a real intellectual type and everyone's still here and it's already it's nearly what is it? Yeah, half of them meant to be here, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good to still meet people and stuff.
Yeah,
and join meeting other people today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
everyone's really nice.
Yeah, the people that come to these sorts of events, you know their heart's in the right place and they've got it going on, like, and they want to be able to do things like promote. I'll see you, James. Thank you. Thank you. No, it was really good.
See you guys next week.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
See you later. Yeah, I think that people that come here are really interested in promoting things like social cohesion. So yeah.
And they're leaving like more enthused, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I know. People are pumped.
What do you reckon? Who did you like? Victoria just asked me a couple of questions about the event.
Yeah. Sorry, nice to meet you. I'm Basil. How are you?
What's your name, sorry, mate?
Basil.
It's nice to meet you. Yeah, my thing came up. I think it's on my shoe.
Yeah, they're really bad stickies, aren't they?
Someone went cheap on it.
Yeah. I've just always had bad luck with sticky.
I think people form a lot of assumptions about people, and often don't get past that. But I don't know, like I just think it's so important to get past those initial assumptions, and when you realise that like even people who you didn't think you had anything in common with, you actually can find common ground. It's just really awesome, and I think one of the really cool things about I Am the Other and what they're promoting, social cohesion, is it's about celebrating diversity. It's about like everyone being different and being themselves and in that difference, but that's really cool and that's what makes life cool, what makes life interesting.
Yeah, to get to know others by getting rid of your prejudice.
It's like Harmony Day at school and stuff like that. Like, you used to bring all the cultures together.
Yeah. And I think it totally goes, it's like the way they were talking about social cohesion as well, like it goes beyond tolerance, it goes beyond understanding, it goes beyond, I think even harmony, it's like there's so much, like so many interesting things you can learn from other people who have very different experiences. So I just love the idea of celebrating that and promoting that.
Okay, awesome. And like, how did you find the event today?
Yeah, it was great. I think it was really interesting. I think there were lots of new ideas that I hadn't sort of come across in that way. I think a lot of them made a lot of sense. But it was cool to actually consciously think about what it means for a society to be cohesive and what it means to break down those boundaries and celebrate that difference. So.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thanks for that.
Thanks for that one.
Is it okay if I take a picture of you?
Yeah, sure.
Being all famous now.
Do you want to get the picture, or do you just want me?
Just you, because then like if we use any like kind of like quotes or what you think about it and stuff, we might associate it face and such. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I understand. I'm wearing contacts at the moment. I've been wearing them. What you thought of this event?
I liked it a lot. Yeah, it was really enlightening.
How's it? Oh, sorry. How's it similar? Like, do you find it serves a similar, maybe allophilic purpose as your group, or?
In a way, like our group is more focused on like the economics behind setting up a business, pretty much. But like from a philosophical point of view, definitely, like you set up something small to help a certain community, not so much for your own gain, but actually because you believe that other people deserve the same equal opportunities that you do. So in a way, yeah, it's a similar mindset for the people that are here, definitely.
Sorry. Sorry.
I'm just going with it. What was like perhaps like the best thing about this event today? Like what really grabbed you, or perhaps like something new you learned, or any ideas that came out?
The breakout groups. Once people start talking to each other, like the start was really interesting. Like videos always cool, but once you actually start talking to each other, like the ideas start flowing. I think it's a good start, yeah, for something more in the future, definitely.
Do you think events like this are important?
Yes. Well, especially events like this, I think, mostly because Australia lacks empathy in a lot of different areas, and it's pretty much what addresses it and looks at the theoretical reasons why actually getting together and talking about it might potentially in the future resolve it.
Change the world.
I know. Is there anything else we can ask or anything? I'm just trying to make stuff on the go.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We're just kids. We don't have to.
We're just the first year.
I was there, not so long ago.
Yeah, but basically just getting your opinion on like this event as somebody who's like not on the committee kind of thing that's created this and stuff. So it's just interesting to hear like how you feel.
I think I guess like from an outside perspective, I think it's important that these types of organisations exist because it's a sort of conduit between other organisations that try to achieve something, and be it like computer literacy in Africa to coaching kids in high schools with someone else. I think it's important to come together and talk about the underlying motives of why people are doing it and why it is necessary to do stuff like it. But even the smaller things like how people in society interact with each other. That's totally outside the scope of other organisations being here, but just individuals talking to each other and saying like, hey, why aren't we talking to our neighbours? Is there a reason for it? Analysing the problems we are facing. we're talking about how to solve them, but not so much acknowledging them, because it's not a way to get somewhere or to solve a social problem.
To go straight into it. To actually make the change without just gloating over the idea of the issue.
You can gloat over it and say a problem exists, but not until you break the problem down in its fundamental components that you can see the sort of overlapping parts or the things that you can actually solve. Or you come up on things that you might not have thought about before. And I guess the best way to describe this, like the problems of yesterday can't be solved with yesterday's thinking, so you have to think outside of the box. Pretty much.
Sorry, I just really like the yesterday quote, so I'm trying to get
it down.
That
was really good.
That's not my quote, that's Albert Einstein. So.
Yeah, but I'm just inserting it, be like, this is a good quote, because it could be still a cool quote to put in.
We're going to have to get a consent form for Albert Einstein.
Yeah, no.
He's dead, so
that might be a bit difficult. Do you have a time machine on you?
He thought he made a time machine, didn't he?
Okay, I think I'm pretty good then. Is it okay if I get a photo of you just to like...
Oh, no, absolutely. How exactly? And I think it's really interesting, and like I've obviously, we were preparing for me.
As you can see, planning's essential. We could have done a lot better with planning. We actually announced this like 5 days ago.
Yeah.
You know, we've been thinking about it for a long time. So we've done the research. So we've done many months of research. And for us, we had in mind a space for people to come together. We had to we had to find a space that could support this kind of collaboration. So we did research into the ideas and research into the space. That was just as important as the ideas. Once we found this space, and I looked at a few venues, I went there and I really got a sense of what it might look like with people. There was only one space we could think of that would be ideal. It was Spacecubed. It was just a matter of actually getting buy-in from the rest of the team, actually, because you can have a great idea, but unless you get support from in-house, it's not going to go far. So we spent 4 weeks doing it. Yeah, so we pitched the idea over 4 weeks. Yeah. After we got buy-in, we agreed on a date, a time, and a budget.
Yeah, right.
We booked it, we booked the venue, and then eventually promoted it. And the way that we promoted it was through the website. So we built a website for it, the Squarespace website.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It was very like appealing.
Yeah.
Simple in the way that like you can just read it through. So I really like that.
And I can show you guys how to do that. Yeah, it's not hard. Yeah. So, so we just had to kind of make it easy for people to want to come. So as little information as possible, and then that's pretty much it. I think you can plan everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to achieve anything. We can achieve everything we set out to do, but if it's not, for the right reason, or if it's not coming from heart, an authentic place, then it's just, I don't think it's going to have the effect that we desire it to. So that's pretty much what we do behind the scenes. We're not natural organisers. We do ideas. We don't do organising. So this stretched us, but we just supported each other along the way, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
I just it's very important to know how things are made and stuff, because it's not it's easy to just look at your website or something and be like, oh yeah, this. But knowing how you guys actually work, it's been very interesting to learn so far.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's why it's very good to ask those questions, because I have no idea. People don't have any idea.
Well, that's what I mean. There's the website, there's information, but then there's experience, and so we lean way more on experience than anything else. So this is what we love to do. This side of things. So
how did you think the event went? The running of it today?
Yeah, look, I think it came together in the end. I think it was pretty. It was a pretty difficult start for us.
because you have to acknowledge that you've let down people. I mean, people paid to begin at a certain time. They had planned their evenings to begin at a certain time, and we didn't. We're 30 minutes late. So we had to acknowledge that, and that takes a toll on you emotionally. And once we were honest and authentic about that, then we could, engage with people. So I think in the end, it was a successful night only because people came together and they were very authentic and they had great ideas. So I think if you remove that collaboration, it wouldn't have been a very good night. No, not at all.
I think that's what makes it so great, like collaboration and people who are really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the idea we were getting from other people who were just rocking up like to the event and stuff because they heard through it like social media and stuff. What we were getting back was like, it's very neat because in the fact that you're actually just getting there and you're talking to people and you're coming up with ideas that are like practical. It's not just like,
absolutely.
oh, this is bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's really crap and it's a bad situation and you're all responsible. No, we know that emotions are everything. So emotions drive behavior. So everything we did tonight, we were building up to a very positive emotional state, and that would be the driver for action, not information. The information was only part of it. It was that positive emotion. So every event we do, the end is always the biggest, most emotional part of it. Yeah. So, and maybe you felt that crescendo as we were talking about the ideas. It was kind of building up, and then we had that peak, and that's what will drive people: the idea and the emotion. Yeah. So, yeah.